And it's just going to take a second. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. And it's just going to take a second. Okay. And if anyone has like any questions, please add them to the chat and I'll try to get to them towards the end of Ran's talk. Let me mute myself on YouTube. Here we go. And it's just going to take a second. And if anyone has like any questions, okay, there we go. Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Or is my voice too soft, too loud?
Sounds good to me. I hear you right.
Perfect. Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Today's our last Sunday for Ramadan, and I'm honestly kind of like, I just feel a lot of mixed emotions, mainly the emotion of sadness, because this Ramadan has been very different, but also a really good time to spiritually connect. And today we invited Dr. Ron Diab to talk to us about Itikaf. A little bit about Rand. She's a longtime member of the Chicago Muslim community, and I'm so happy that Instagram has connected us and given us the opportunity to learn from you and also connect with you. And she lives with her husband and her 3 children. Rand, how old are your children? We have to share this because when I first started following your Instagram, I thought you were like in your mid-20s.
Yeah, I wish I was in my mid-20s. My kids are 13 and 16 and 20.
Yes, that difficult age. And she does such an amazing job with them. She's also an ophthalmologist in the Chicago area and an active member in the Muslim community where she organizes support groups for converts, and she teaches Quran, and she does a really good job with also teaching Quran for converts and Muslim-born like me. And she also is the founder and active member of Carrier of Lights. That's the name of the school, right? The Islamic school?
Carriers of Light.
Carriers of Light. And she's actually the founder and a continuous active board member. And in her free time, she loves sports and fitness, and she blogs about that on Instagram and her life experiences as a Muslim woman hijab. And I feel like that was one of the reasons why I also started my Instagram, because I feel like it's each Muslim hijabi has a different experience. And I love that also, Alejandra, you talk about that too as a convert. So it's amazing to have us all connect. I'll also be posting her website in the chat, and you guys can check it out. She posts a lot of blogs on her websites to go into detail about different life experiences. And so today we're going to really focus on Itikaf for women and what that looks like. So when I think about Itikaf, I always feel like it's a hardship because you have to kind of seclude yourself in an environment and really dedicate all your time in spiritual energy in that time. And pretty much that's all what you're doing all day long. My first experience was with Itikaf when I was in Seattle, and we were there for the summer, and they have a really nice small masjid called Maps, and a couple of girls and we did Itikaf in the mosque for the last 10 days. And it was so amazing because it really gave us that motivation to focus on reading Quran, making dua together, and then we would share like different spiritual stories together to help us reconnect. So it was really nice to have that time to focus. But I know for women and moms and working moms, that's kind of hard. And so today we're going to talk about that in detail with Ron.
Yes, thank you. Do you have my slides?
I do.
Okay, we can start probably with the slides right from the beginning. So just housekeeping things, if everyone doesn't mind just muting themselves so we don't get a lot of background noise. So this is maybe not a super popular topic because people are not really familiar with it. Like, you know, what is Itikaf? Why is it important? So that's, you know, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about this topic, because we just, as women, especially, and especially for young women, it's not something that you hear a lot about. Generally, when we hear about Itikaf, we hear about it probably in the context of the last 10 days of Ramadan, and particularly for men in the mosque. So I think a lot of women don't feel like it's applicable to them. And that's really why I wanted to talk about this subject, is just to show us that as women, we have access to this, and quarantine Ramadan has actually made this even more relevant, because for women, if we were going to the mosque, we would have the option of making i'tikaf in some mosques. Like if there's some mosques have a place for women can do it, and some only have a place for men. But women can make i'tikaf in their home at any time. And that's really why I wanted to talk about this topic. So first of all, what is i'tikaf? I probably should have a slide on that. It basically means you go into seclusion. You can do it in the mosque, or you can do it as a woman in your home. And I think it's important for us first to try to understand, why would we want to do this, and what are the merits of it? So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever for the Allah's sake did even one day's i'tikaf, Allah would keep him away from the hellfire by trenches, meaning long distances. And the Prophet ﷺ also said about an i'tikaf that whoever does it is safe from sin, and also gets the reward which everyone outside of i'tikaf is getting for their good deeds. So you're safe from committing sin because you're in i'tikaf. And even though you might not be able to do some of the other deeds that people are doing outside of i'tikaf, like let's say feeding others or serving your family or whatever, you're going to get the reward for those as well. So it's kind of a double reward. And go to the next slide. Another really important aspect of i'tikaf is the forgiveness. So the Prophet ﷺ said, the person who secludes himself in i'tikaf in true faith and hope for the reward of Allah, all of his previous sins shall be forgiven. That hadith is actually the same construct as the hadith that says, whoever fasts in Ramadan in true faith and hope for Allah's rewards, all of his previous sins shall be forgiven. And there are multiple hadith about, you know, similar things that you can do to get your sins forgiven. The other reason it's really important to do i'tikaf is that this is a really important sunnah. It's a tradition of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the sunnah is meant to be kept alive. So what we say is that this is something that somebody should be doing at least in Ramadan, the last 10 days. There should be at least one person in every mosque practicing this sunnah, if not more. So it's an important thing to keep alive. The wife of the Prophet, Sayyidah Aisha, said that the Prophet ﷺ used to observe i'tikaf during the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan, and he continued this practice until his death. After him, his wives carried on this practice of observing i'tikaf regularly. So even the women participated in this. There's also a form of i'tikaf that's just a voluntary. It's considered a nafil. It's not part of the sunnah of the last 10 days of Ramadan. And this can be done at any time of the year. It doesn't have a specific time. It doesn't have a specific number of days. And you don't have to be fasting. It doesn't have to be in Ramadan. Even if you were just going to the masjid one day for a regular prayer, and you made the intention of i'tikaf for those 5 minutes or 10 minutes or hour that you were in the masjid, then you could get the reward of that i'tikaf. And for women, we can do i'tikaf in our home, so you can make that intention at any time. Okay, so what does it mean to make i'tikaf for women? So what you would do is you would choose a place in your home, and then prepare it with the items that you want to have with you, because once you enter into the state of Itikaf, it's a state of seclusion, so you can't be going in and out of the area to get other items. So try to plan ahead and pick whatever items you want to already have with you. You need to be in a state of wudu, and that also means you need to be in a state of ritual purity. So if you are in your menses, you have your period, you can't make Itikaf. You can still make spiritual seclusion. It's just slightly different intention, and it's not exactly the same as Itikaf. What you do in Itikaf, you focus on worship. You want to limit any talk and any distractions, and you can stay in Itikaf for any length of time. So you could stay just for a few minutes, you could stay for hours, you could stay for days.
And I love that, Rand, at the beginning of Ramadan, when you shared your I'tikaf corner, or like your Ramadan corner.
Yeah, I have some pictures in the slides here.
They're beautiful.
Well, and I think it's really important for women to understand that I'tikaf can be very amounts of time, because for a lot of us, unrealistic to stay for maybe 10 days in I'tikaf. Like if you have a family, if you have kids, you know, whatever. So how do you enter the state of I'tikaf? It's so simple. You literally, just like I said, you set aside that place in your home. It can be a corner, it can be an entire room, but it has to be like a very specific place that you have limited. You know, it's from here to here, and that's my I'tikaf corner. And you enter into the intention. You say, I intend I'tikaf, or in English, you could say, I intend spiritual seclusion, and this is my masjid. So in Arabic, the intention is Nawaitu I'tikaf wa hada masjidi. So this area is my masjid. So you say that when you first enter I'tikaf, and if you have to leave I'tikaf, you have to leave that space, or you have to leave the state. It's like you're now in a spiritual state or a mental state of I'tikaf. If you have to leave that state, or if you have to leave that place for any reason, then when you come back to it, you have to remake the intention again. So for example, if you lost your wudu, you are now no longer in a state of I'tikaf. So you'd leave the space, you'd make wudu, and you'd enter again with that intention. Okay, so here's a picture of my place of I'tikaf. It's a corner in my bedroom. Some of the items I like to have, I've got my prayer rug, prayer clothes. I have a Quran. I have different Islamic books, some dhikr beads. I like to have scented candles or like incense or something. I have a pillow and a blanket. Sometimes I lay down a little. Sometimes I, sit in different positions. It gets, if you're for a few hours at a time, you need to kind of change the way you're sitting, and sometimes you can lay down. I think I have a video on the next slide, which shows a little bit more detail. It'll come up. So what do I do in I'tikaf? So what you can...
Sorry, Iran.
Okay. That's okay. What you can do in I'tikaf, prayer. Okay, so what I like to do is, if I'm going to do I'tikaf in the middle of the day, then if I can, I like to time it with the farad prayers. So I would, let's say, enter I'tikaf at dhuhr time. I would pray my dhuhr prayer, my farad, and then I might stay in I'tikaf until the asr prayer, pray the asr on time, and then I might exit, for example. So you can also do it in the night, and you could be praying like extra prayers, nafil prayers. You could do it at taraweeh time if you're doing your taraweeh. So I mean, you can do it at any time of the day, and prayer can be any kind of prayer can be a component, whether it's a farad, a sunnah, or a nafil prayer. Reading Quran is a really important part of I'tikaf. Making dhikr, making dua. So any form of worship, it doesn't have to be ritual worship. You could go into a state of I'tikaf, and maybe you start with just 2 rak'ahs nafil, and then maybe the rest of the time you're actually studying an Islamic topic. You don't have to do ritual worship the entire time that you're in I'tikaf. Another really important thing is reflection and contemplation. And that's something I think a lot of us underestimate the importance of. So another thing I forgot to show you in the list is you can have a journal with you, an I'tikaf, and a pen, and you can spend some of the time making notes and journaling and reflecting. And for me personally, I've found that to be a really nice way to spend my time in I'tikaf. So what I found is that when I first get into I'tikaf, at the beginning, I'm still like distracted by all my worldly affairs. Like my mind is still going. And so like I do my prayer, I sit down, I read some Quran, I do all of these things, but I haven't settled yet. Like I haven't felt that spiritual sense of like, I'm settling now. I'm kind of like, my mind is still busy. It takes me a while, maybe even sometimes an hour, or, to just really settle into the fact that I am in a spiritual space now. mentally, and I'm trying to go into more of like a meditative state. Like, so it takes me some time. So when you're using that time, you can use it for a variety of things. So what I like to do is sometimes I like to just sit and think and reflect on areas in my life that I know I need to work on, areas that I need Allah's help with, and that may involve some journaling as well. And then what I do is I use those ideas, whatever they may be, and I channel them into dua. So let's say I'm really struggling with a certain issue, I'm journaling about it, and then I'm channeling it into a dua where I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help me with those things. And for me personally, I found that gives me a really good connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It gives me a really close feeling to him. And it really makes the Atikaf experience very unique for me. Somehow, when I'm just in my hustle and bustle of everyday life, I don't always get that space to make that really deep connection. And another thing you can do in Atikaf is you can do a gratitude practice. You can just sit and reflect on all of the things that you're thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. And if you need sort of a little help to get that started, one of the things you can start with is just doing a body scan and just thanking Allah for your eyes and your, your nose, your tongue, your face, your ears, your hearing, your heart, that it's pumping independently without your help, your lungs, that they're breathing independently without your help. We don't have to like set a timer and say, I'm going to breathe now for this amount of time, or we don't have to double check our heart to make sure, like, most of us, unless somebody had a medical problem. So, these are the kinds of things we take for granted. So sometimes you can start a gratitude practice with something as simple as just a body scan. And then you're going to get into the more, many more things in your life that you're very grateful for. So I'tikaf is not just prayer. It's not just you get into your prayer rug and all you do is pray. There's so much more that can be done. One of the things I've experienced this Ramadan that I've really loved is that when I set aside, like, say, 3 hours for I'tikaf, I can allow myself to explore things that I wouldn't be able to do when I'm in a hurry all the time. So I might be reading Quran and then come across a verse that's really interesting to me. And I'm like, what is this about? This is interesting. So then I open it up, I read it in the translation, and then from there, I'm like, I might read the footnotes in the translation. And then I'm like, oh, this is an interesting story of when this was revealed. So then I open up the Sirah book. I have one called Revelation, and it kind of connects sometimes, where things were revealed, what was going on in the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at that time, and then I'm reading about that, trying to understand the context of why that was revealed. And then there's a story about one of the companions, one of the Sahaba. So then I look the companion up and I'm reading about them, and it's like this very organic, natural way to study your religion and to learn it based on your own interest and your passion. And you can do that in I'tikaf. You can do so many things in this time that are going to bring you closer to God and are going to increase your spirituality and your Islamic knowledge and your Islamic connection. So I really think it's important for us not to limit ourselves, just to the traditional, what we think of ritual worship. So I'll go to the next slide. Sorry, I didn't give you access. So we'll just go ahead and go to the next one. You can just go to the next slide.
Oh, the next one. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So what is allowed and what is not allowed while you're in I'tikaf? We already know what are the things we're trying to accomplish, but what are we allowed to do? You can have snacks with you. You can snack while you're in I'tikaf. You could even eat a meal if it was like, if you were doing 10 days in the masjid, obviously you would eat your iftar meal, your suhoor meal, that sort of thing. You can take a nap in I'tikaf. If you're going to go into I'tikaf for like 2 or 3 hours and you spend the whole time napping, obviously the value of that I'tikaf is much less than if you were able to spend a part of it in worship. But sometimes I found that a short nap in I'tikaf is very, very refreshing. You're already in a very calm state by then. You've been doing like some dhikr, you've been sort of getting into this meditative state, and then you're able to take a short nap. It's really, it's a special kind of sleep sometimes. It's very refreshing. You can do necessary talk in I'tikaf. So when I'm sitting in the corner of my bedroom, my family is coming in and out. My kids come in and they usually know I'm probably in I'tikaf. I might tell them I'm in I'tikaf, but they have a question for me, like, can I do this thing? I need this thing. Can you order this for me? Can you take care of that? What are we having for dinner? Whatever. I can answer them, whatever. I just keep it very short, and not get carried away with unnecessary talking and joking around and, the normal stuff. So you can do necessary talk. Similarly, if you needed to have your cell phone with you, you could respond if it was like to like a necessary message or something. But that is that can be a rabbit hole, the having the phone with you. So I would be very cautious with that one. I already mentioned journaling and self-reflection. And then I mentioned non-ritual worship. So let's say you've really been wanting to listen to a certain Islamic YouTube video or a podcast. You can do that while you're in Itikaf. That's okay. So you're learning, you're doing some kind of Islamic learning, and that's okay in Itikaf. So this is just like, think of it as like, I am setting this aside. It's me time. It's not me time in the dunyawi sense. It's me time in the deen sense, the akhirah sense. I am setting this time aside for me, for my spiritual growth. And that can look different ways for different people. Okay. What's not allowed in I'tikaf? Well, obviously anything haram. Okay. Any type of idle talk or distraction. So if you had your phone with you and you were responding to a message and then you got busy looking at social media and you're scrolling on social media, that would not be appropriate. If you're texting unnecessarily with friends, having conversations, watching a show, obviously, or listening to music or something would not be appropriate. If you're just reading articles about like unrelated things, like one time I had my phone with me in I'tikaf and a notification popped up for like a BBC article that looked really interesting, and I was like, I can't read that while I'm in I'tikaf. It's not relevant. If you got your period or you lost your wudu, then you'd have to leave I'tikaf until you could remake your wudu. And then, as I mentioned before, excessive eating or sleeping, that's not what we're here for. We're really trying to be in a more spiritual state in I'tikaf and focus on these different forms of worship. And again, when we're choosing to go in I'tikaf, especially as women, we're doing it in our home, we're putting aside all the life's distractions. Think of this as you're choosing this time for yourself. So you don't want to waste it on all these other things. So if I take my phone with me on the I'tikaf, I try to put it on do not disturb or airplane mode. Sometimes I take my laptop because sometimes I might be researching a topic and I may want to look up some hadith or Quran or, different things that are related. But generally, it's really nice if you could not have those things as much as possible so that you can really focus, because the reality is that we get so easily distracted, and so we can get kind of carried away, wasting our time on stuff that's not really what we're there for. We are so busy as people, but especially as women, especially those of us who are in families where we have other obligations, whether you're a daughter or a mom or whatever. And so we deserve this time, okay? We need this time and we deserve this time. And people always talk about pamper yourself and you only live once and, you do you, boo, and me time and whatever. This is it for us. This is the best me time you can give yourself. This is your best gift you can give yourself. This is how we pamper ourselves, because this spiritual time will heal our hearts. It was like a balm to heal your heart, and it will elevate you spiritually and it will raise you. It is like this quiet time where you just sit there by yourself and just work through everything that you have to work through. Because when you sit alone and you sit by yourself in silence, stuff is going to come up for you. Thoughts, ideas, feelings, discomfort. It is all going to start coming up for you. You're going to stand up to pray and you're going to have a million thoughts in your head. This is your time to work through all of that. This is your time to practice focusing and concentrating. So right now, in pop culture, meditation is like super popular right now in the West. And, the traditional cultures and traditional religions of the East have always had meditation as a component. But now it's becoming secularized and it's becoming a really popular thing to do for all of its mental health and physical health benefits. Well, in Islam, we've always had that. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when people would go into a state of prayer, it was such a deeply meditative state. There are stories about Sahaba. There was one Sahabi who he had been shot with an arrow into his leg and they wanted to pull it out and it was going to be so severely painful. He said, let me enter into Salah first and you can pull it out while I'm praying and I won't feel it. That's how meditative their prayer was, and obviously most of us aren't there. Like, I am not even close to being there. So, and I'm not, I'm speaking to myself here first, but this is something I'm working on. Let's take these concepts we can learn from secular meditation and let's apply them into our religious practice in the way that we can benefit from, so that when you go into a state of atikaf, once you leave that state, you should feel different. You should feel better. You should feel lighter. You should feel good. And that's why I say take a journal with you, because I'm telling you guys, when you finally sit down with yourself, it's like your first moment of true silence. You don't have your phone, you don't have people around you. Stuff is going to come up for you, and you might want to journal about it. You might want to write it out. Like, what are the things you're feeling? What are the things you're thinking? You may be struggling with certain emotions and old trauma, maybe pain, things that have hurt you. And when you finally take a moment for yourself, unfortunately, that maybe when that time comes up, you may not be able to, when those feelings come up, you may not be able to sit quietly and just feel great. Oh, I'm on this spiritual high. It feels like, all your pain may come up, and that's okay. Let it out, journal it out onto the page, and channel that into dua. This is for you. This is your time with Allah. Channel all those feelings into a dua. Tell Allah, I am hurting. I'm mad at this person. They hurt my feelings, and I'm struggling to let go of it. I'm struggling to forgive. I am upset about this thing in my life that I can't control, that I wish I could control. Ya Allah, please help me to be content with what you've decreed for me. Ya Allah, please help me to realize that I want to give all of my affairs over to you to control for me. I don't want to try to control my life. I want to let you guide me and you control my affairs, because you know better than me. Things like that. Talk to Allah. So take whatever's coming up for you and channel it into dua. What I like to do when I'm in atikaf is I like to start first with some formal worship, some kind of ritual ibadah. Now remember, one of the things we don't always talk about is the unseen world. So the angels, especially when you start reading Quran, when you start praying, when you start doing dhikr, angels will come and they will surround you. That is going to give you such an important feeling of peace. And it's going to help you so much in terms of your mental health and your physical health, that it's going to make everything feel better. So start with ritual worship, start with prayer. That's why I said at the beginning, I try to start this at a time when it's a farad prayer, but you could just do 2 rak'ahs nafil and just start with prayer. Read some Quran and do some traditional adhkar. If you go on my Instagram page, I have in my profile link a link to the traditional morning and evening adhkar. If it's early, if you're just starting your day, or if you're kind of ending your day, or whenever in the day, you can use those. They're very nice and they're very straightforward. I have them all written out, Arabic, English transliteration. Start with the adhkar and just go through those things. At first, you're going to feel like you're just going through the motions. You're going to feel like, I'm just reading these words. They're not touching me. I'm not feeling it. Or if you take your dhikr beats and you just do astaghfirullah al-azim, make istighfar, ask Allah for forgiveness, you're going to feel like, I'm just going through the motions. I'm not feeling it. That's okay. Go through the motions. Just keep doing it. And it's going to take time. And it may take you multiple sessions of atikaf before you get one moment where you feel that feeling, that sweetness of faith, that really peaceful spiritual feeling. Okay, so go ahead and go through the motions. That's okay. And I, like I said, it takes me sometimes like an hour, 2 hours sitting in atikaf before I feel everything sort of just peel away. All the layers just kind of fall away, and finally I feel like I'm here with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm connecting with him. And it may even be 1 minute or one moment of this all the time that I'm in atikaf, but it is so worth it. When you feel that, even for just a few moments, you will always want that feeling again, and you'll strive to go back to it. So for me, atikaf has been a huge blessing in Ramadan this year in quarantine. I hope I can take this habit out of Ramadan with me, so that at other times of the year, I'll make atikaf as well. It's just been a time when I can really focus on my spiritual goals. I can really focus on this connection with Allah that I don't always get a chance to other times, because I'm just so busy with everything else. So that basically sums it up for atikaf. It's very simple and straightforward. I hope that you guys took away from it that it's easy to do. Try it, practice it, keep going back to it, and do different things with it. And what I wanted to do as we close is open the discussion up to a question that I've been thinking about, which is, why is i'tikaf so important? Like, why is it such a big sunnah? Why is there so much reward in it? Like, what is the big deal about it? Why do we always hear about it as being an important thing to do? And why might it be relevant to us in today's world? And especially for us as women, and especially for us now with the masajid closed and we can't even go and do atikaf in the masjid. Why is it so important and why is it still relevant?
And I think, sorry. Okay. Thanks. Jazakallah khairan, Ran. I feel like when, when I'm hearing you talk about like times of the day that you can make i'tikaf, it really hit home to me that you don't have to do it for a certain, during a certain time period or for a certain length. It's that just that mindfulness of dedication of that time and that intentionality of really putting that intent that you're putting this time away for God. I think one of the hardest things is putting away my phone, because you're right. Like sometimes, like I have my Azkar app on my phone, and then I have my Quran app, and so things will pop up, notifications, like you said with BBC. And so I think that's one of the challenges sometimes, is to kind of find another device that you can kind of use to help you decrease that distraction and
I actually
spiritually.
found myself reverting back to like a lot of my old books. I brought a whole bunch of books with me into Atikaf, dua books and other, I'm going down into my basement library where all this stuff is stored. And I'm like, I had a book about this, and I'm pulling out actual books, instead of using devices. That's how I've been doing it. But yes, you can intend Atikaf at every Fard's prayer time. You can say, I'm nawaited Atikaf. I'm going to go into Atikaf the masjidi and go in at every prayer time and do it as well. And it, just like you said, it's the intentionality. It reminds you that when I'm here, I'm not going to pray my Fard and then pull out my phone and like scroll my notifications. No, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to, however long I'm here, even if it's just 10 minutes or 5 minutes, it's the dedicated time. So like you said, intentionality is really important for us as Muslims.
Yeah. So right now at this time, we'll usually have like a discussion. So for the ladies that are on, if you'd like, you can add your comments in the chat and I can share them, or you can turn your mic on and share it with the group. There's a question about, I've been part of the Women's Quran Tilawa and translation. We begin and finish in. So
I think we're missing part of the question.
Yeah, I think. But I think, okay, let's go back. So I think like one of the things that actually helps, like the benefits of i'tikaf, it really helps with being a lot more mindful in your acts of worship or any kinds of acts. And I found that like this Ramadan, when I did a small, I didn't actually put my intent to do i'tikaf, but now that I'm thinking about it, I should have done that, because I was dedicating after Dhuhr prayer 30 minutes where I read Quran and did prayers and really reflected on some of the things that I wanted to work on at night. And I think when you have those moments where you're intentionally doing that, it helps you pre-plan what you need to do and what you need to accomplish for the rest of the day or the night or the next day. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of
Assalamu
Yes,
alaikum.
sister.
Assalamu alaikum, and how are you? We are connected through Instagram. I'm DocSal2 on Instagram.
Okay.
So I just partly wrote my question, then I thought I should just unmute myself and speak here. So we have been organizing this Quran Tilawa and translation group, which we begin in Ramadan and end in Ramadan. And it's been going on for 12 years, alhamdulillah. We have like a bunch of women and we meet every day for 2 to 3 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. We do have a little discussion in the middle. So recently, one of the participants brought this up that can we use this time and make niyyah of itikaf when we are together, and of course, do not discuss worldly stuff and other things which are not pertinent to Quran. And we do just do translation, but sometimes we delve into tafasir for certain things that we are not clear about. So we have been doing that lately for the last 2 weeks. We just had our khatam yesterday. And Alhamdulillah, it has been a blessing, but I just wanted to make sure that and by the time we end, it's before Dhuhr, and we do pray Nawafil after that, being in the same niyyah. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. If you guys, each of you makes the intention of Atikaf, and you intend that that space that you're in is your masjid, and you follow all the other criteria of Atikaf, and it doesn't seem like a problem to me. I think if people are making Atikaf in a masjid, for example, they are going to be there with other people, and they may have a discussion about some Islamic topics and share their knowledge. So it would, the same thing.
Jazakallah khair. And then today I learned, I always had this question, but did not ask anybody, that itikaf can be made even outside of Ramadan. And, it is something that we can continue to grow spiritually and to have that certain connection. And lately I've learned that we always think about learning the deen from scholars, and that is the tradition of Islam. But seclusion and time to introspect, or maybe tasawwuf is the correct word for that, that adds to the value of learning and growing.
Absolutely. So definitely in our tradition, seclusion is a huge part of the Islamic tradition. We know it right from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We all know about his seclusions in Ghar Hira. He was doing that even prior to getting his first revelation. And it's probably no coincidence that that is where he received his first revelation. Seclusion has always been an important part of our deen. It's sort of a neglected part. And I think, I think we want to try to revive that. And at the end of the discussion, after we've heard from everyone, I have one more slide, and I'll kind of close with that. And it's related to this.
Okay, just one more comment before I go. It was nice to learn. We always had this confusion, we meaning my group and I, that itikaf for women is probably something very hard because we are moms, we are wives, and we have things going on, and we cannot just ideally just leave everything, drive up to our masjid, find a corner. I mean, it was just not possible. So being able to do this in our home, in our safe places, and doing the niyyah, and not to be able to dedicate like days for this, has been a very beneficial and very comforting thought. Jazakallah khair for your time and your efforts. Assalamu alaikum.
You're muted, Ella.
Sorry. Jazakallah khairan, Sister Saliha. Sister Saliha, what city are you from?
I'm in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're close to Rand.
I'm pretty, we're in the same city, but I'm far north, much north. Yes.
Yeah. Jazakallah khairan for sharing. And one of the ladies was saying that one of the benefits that she feels from Atikaf is rejuvenating your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's so beautiful.
Because I think a lot of us haven't. Yeah, she said, I had no idea you could seclude anywhere. Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of us have not tried Atikaf because we thought it was a thing that men do in the masjid in the last 10 days of Ramadan. And that's why I really chose this topic. I just want to raise awareness about how easy it is, and how for women it's such a bonus that we can do it at home. So now the men are like sad because many of them are in the habit of Atikaf in Ramadan and they can't do it. We have like a really good opportunity here as women.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan, Ran. Let me share.
For me, this topic is completely new. Like I had no idea about this. So thank you for teaching me something new, alhamdulillah. But I feel like Allah, like what she was saying, like I wish I could have known this before, because like after I put my kids to bed and I have some alone time in my bedroom, I pray Isha, and then I stay there on my prayer rug and I read the Quran and I do tikr, and like have I known this, like I could have made the intention, but now I know.
Now you
So
can, yeah, you haven't lost anything. You still get, you know, a lot of reward. Now you can do that, inshallah.
yeah, so thank you so much. Like this is very helpful.
Good. I'm glad. I know I'm always learning too. And this is something that you know, I knew about Itikaf before, but this Ramadan was the time I really experimented with it, because in the past, I was always so busy with work. I'm not working as much because of the COVID-19 situation. So I've had more time to really try this out. And I've really loved it. You know, it's been something I've really loved. One of the things I wanted to mention as we close is, and Sister Saleha mentioned this a little bit. I there's a whole nother topic which I'm not going to get into, which is the spiritual diseases of the heart and how we purify our heart, tazkiyat an-nafs, purification of the heart. And so I was referring back to one of my old books I've had for a long time. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf has a book about purification of the heart. And one of the main things that they mention is that the scholars recommend for purification of the heart 4 things: fasting, silence, night worship, and private meditation. And this is something I've really kind of experimented with this Ramadan. The fasting we're already doing during the day, but a lot of us are not really, we're not carrying out the spirit of fasting in the evening, because we may be overdoing it. Sometimes I overdo it when I break my fast. I eat too much. I eat till I have a stomach ache. I like binge on everything I've been craving the whole day. You know, so we're not really following the sunnah, which is, you know, just to eat small morsels of food to keep our back straight. So you can extend the experience of fasting throughout 2 or 3 days if you just eat very small amounts, even in the evening. And I know that sounds shocking at first, because we're starving. We think we're starving, but we're not. And you actually can survive on small amounts of food. Just make sure you're drinking a lot of water. And that, combined with these other 3 things, which are all found in Itikaf, but you can also do them in your regular life when you're not in Itikaf, will raise your spiritual state to something most of us have never experienced. So practicing silence is something I tried for a couple days in Ramadan, and it was just amazing. Like I really just stopped talking outside of what was necessary. And that is, of course, including our phones, like texting, messaging, everything we do, posting on, our stories, whatever. All of that is considered, breaks your silence. Okay, so silence really means like a total silence. Like you are just you and Allah. That's it. Like it's, and of course, if you have kids, you're going to have to talk to them occasionally, but keeping it to a minimum. And then night worship, there's so much value in that. And then the private meditation, and that means you're privately worshiping Allah. You're contemplating, you're reflecting, you're doing your worship in a meditative state. You're not doing your worship in a distracted state where you're thinking about all these other things. And so all of the diseases of the heart, and there are many of them, are all rooted in the love of the dunya. And so when you purify your heart, you're trying to disconnect yourself from the love of this world. And these 4 things will do it for you, because when you haven't been eating and you're not talking to anybody and you're sitting by yourself and worshiping, you are like, you don't feel that passion and the energy and the love of the dunya. Like you just want to go out there and get it. You just don't feel it anymore. Like it turns it off, and it really allows you to think more about God and about the afterlife. It totally shifts your perspective. It's not easy. I'm not telling you guys it's easy, and I'm not saying it's fun. It will be hard in some ways, but actually it's a really strange thing where it actually feels good. It's like this huge weight has finally been lifted off of you, and you can finally just really disconnect and just connect to Allah instead. So I think that's something worth experimenting with as well, and in connection with the Itikaf. I hope that's helpful for you guys. I know it's a little, that's a little bit of a new idea for a lot of us, but I found it to be very enlightening.
Jazakallah khairan, Rand. Silence is one of the hardest things. I feel like sometimes we forget that even by texting or, liking something on social media, that's not silence. So I think when you really go into that moment of silence, you're really able to connect with yourself and what's going on in your mind and in your body.
And that's why I wanted to have that at the end, is to say, you know, as an answer to my question, what are the benefits of Itikaf? I think for us in the modern world where we're constantly connected, disconnecting may be the best benefit of Itikaf for us. And this makes me realize how much wisdom is in our religion, that Islam and the Sunnah is applicable for all times, even for future societies. Thousands of years later, it's still very applicable. In fact, more applicable, you know, because they had, you know, when people didn't have like all the connections that we have, they don't, you know, they could just sit in the dark with no electricity and people aren't going to be talking to them. Their family's asleep. It's silence. We never have that. We have electricity. We have a connection on our phone to the internet that connects us constantly, you know, so to practice this disconnect is even more important than it was for previous societies.
Yeah. SubhanAllah, Jazakallah khairan.
Hayyakum.
We're gonna wrap it up with a dua, and it's gonna be a short dua. I just pray that Allah really blesses our last 10 nights and accepts all our worship, and Allah also rewards Rand for sharing her knowledge about I'tikaf and how we as women can implement I'tikaf at home and throughout our day. And then I ask God to always connect us with the right people and help guide us on the straight path, and bless us with the highest level in paradise. Jazakallah khairan, everyone. Have a great, happy 10 days. And inshallah, once things settle down, we'll plan another Chai Talk meetup, share and reflect, possibly at the very end of June. We just kind of want to take the next after Ramadan as a time for reflection upon Ramadan, and also a time for us to start conditioning ourselves to generalize the things that we've been working on. And so we'll follow up with everyone after Ramadan. Have a happy rest of the Ramadan.
Thanks so much for inviting me. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.